Hello, my name is Meredith Kutz, a Professional Development Associate here at NACE. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Welcome to the Preskilling Revolution. It is my pleasure to introduce Tom Brunskill, CEO of Forage. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Meredith. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today, an incredible privilege. I'm not sure if everyone's turning up that I saw, but I saw that we had hundreds of registrations. So I feel immensely lucky to be speaking with such an incredible community. That's what I think about when I think about NACE. It's just an incredible community. I'll also apologize in advance. I have a 6-week newborn in the background who has recently discovered his lungs, young Rory. So suffice to say, if you hear a screaming baby in the background, please do not worry. My wife and I most of the time have it under control. But today we're going to be talking about how and why companies should be pre-skilling talent. Why they should be pre-skilling candidates. This is a topic which is very near and dear to me and sits at the heart of what we do at Forage. For those who don't know, I'm Tom and I'm a co-founder and the CEO of Forage. I'm based here in very foggy San Francisco, despite my accent. Although we have team members in far sunnier Texas, Florida, Delaware, New York, and other places. So you might be wondering, what is it that we actually do at Forage? And that's actually very important context for today's conversation. We work with some incredible companies, many of whom I saw are on today's presentation, to create virtual online training courses for college students to build career skills and confidence. Over 1.5 million students have enrolled in our courses over the last 12 months. And these courses have been created by incredible companies such as GE, Citi, Goldman Sachs, Microsoft, and a bunch of others. We also are very fortunate to work with incredible universities here in the US as well, many of whom I can also see on today's call. I think we now work with over 80 schools here in the US who use our courses to upskill their students and prepare them for the world of work. But enough about us. I want you to go back and remember what it was like to choose your first job. I think I shared my own personal story at the last NACE presentation that we did, but I was raised in a family of small shop owners in a small town called Wagga Wagga in Australia. And unfortunately, the only unique part of my story is probably the name of the town that I'm from. Because like most people, I didn't have bankers, I didn't have attorneys, I didn't have accountants in my family. I was one of the first people in my family to go to university. And because of that, I had tremendous opportunities, but I didn't really have any guidance or any support in terms of like, what should I be doing? Like, where should I be taking my career? And in the absence of that guidance, and this is embarrassing to admit, but I chose to become a corporate attorney quite simply because I loved watching Suits and Boston Legal. Now, shock horror, that's not a great reason to choose a career. But at the time, I was choosing a career, and I wonder if you can empathize with this. I was feeling overwhelmed, anxious, and totally confused as to what job I should pursue. I relied on imperfect, inaccurate, and misleading reasons to make what was a critical life decision. I'm sure every single one of you has a story, you, maybe someone close to you, who fell into their first job, who fell into their first career through dumb luck, and it just didn't end up being a great fit. I spent 4 years trying to fall in love with being an attorney, even though I knew deep down it wasn't a great fit within the first few months of work. As I said, my story, sadly, isn't that unique. It's pretty common. We all have a connection to this type of story. And it's the reason why I ended up leaving my job as a corporate attorney, because I had that pesky thought rolling through my head, which is there's got to be a better way for young people to discover their first job, And there's got to be a better way for companies to like front load that career discovery for young people. And that's why I'm so passionate about what we're building here at Forage, and particularly about the topic that we're going to be covering today. And today we're going to be talking about how can we redesign the system so that employers and students can make better decisions about how to choose the right career if you're a student, and better decisions about how to hire the right students if you're a company. One of our staff members at Forage put it to me this way: how does choosing a job become more like eHarmony and less like Tinder? Now, as someone who met my wife long before dating apps, this didn't initially resonate. But once she explained further, it actually made a ton of sense. We need to create a system where candidates and employers can get to know each other in a meaningful and impactful way before committing to one another, because that's what we're looking for. We want to see a commitment from the candidate, and we want to see a commitment for the employer. How can a student road test different careers without actually having to sign up for a job? How can a company preview how a student would perform in a role long before even interviewing them? How do we arm both sides, the student and the company, with better information so that both can make better choices? The reason why we need to change the system is because the status quo isn't working for candidates, and it's not working for employers. There are parts which are working, but there is significant room for improvement. We know this because we have access to both qualitative and quantitative evidence. I'm sure if I've got, I think one or two of our team members may be on today's presentation, so they'll probably sigh and bang their head against the wall. But I have a saying which I love, which is that data has a better idea. And while I love hearing anecdotal stories from my team, from students, from our partner universities, from employers about what's happening out there in the market, without the data, they're just stories. At Forage, we take this data and research very seriously. Similar to NACE, we've spent a lot of time conducting research to identify student and employee sentiment, both here in the US and the UK. And so a lot of the data that I'm going to be talking about today, or referencing, although not all of it, is going to be based on the studies that we've been doing with our students, including the reports which I've got listed here. Now, if anyone would like to access these reports, I'll share some company details at the end. Please let our team know, and we can share those reports. But just know that a lot of the data that we're using today comes from these different reports, which are focused both in the US and UK, and also by specific verticals. So whether it might be like business, law, accounting, or whatnot. But let's start with the student side of the ecosystem and why the system doesn't seem to be working. The quality feedback that our research has surfaced is that students are nervous about their careers. They often feel overwhelmed and confused, similar to the way that I felt 10 years ago, and probably similar to the way that my parents felt 20, 30 years ago. One student, they feel like they're flying blind. As one student put it to me recently, they said that their approach to finding a job was to throw spaghetti at the wall and hope something would stick. And they were using this approach not because they were trying to hedge their bets and maximize their chances of getting a job, but because they truthfully didn't have a sense of what to apply for and hoped that they would figure it out during the recruitment process itself. And look, like, we have so many quotes and so much data on this area. So I could share, if you get access to our reports, you can see more of these. But this for me was probably a quote that very simply distilled the overwhelming sentiment that we get from students. And perhaps I chose this one because it resonated with me, particularly personally, having gone to law school myself. And that's just particularly that first sentence. I just don't have a clear idea on what career path to pursue. And the data backs up this idea that the recruitment system isn't working for students the way that it's currently structured. Firstly, our research shows that a significant percentage of students don't feel ready for the world of work at the time that they start their job. Our research report found that 59% of students feel ready for work, while 41% did not. We found that many of these students were anxious, overwhelmed, and feel like they didn't have the skills for the workforce. Now, some of us might be thinking, well, that's okay. We can just get them ready once they join our company. But it's more complex than that. Think about when you've spoken to someone who feels like they don't have the skills or experience to do something. If I see a job for an astronaut, I'm probably not going to apply for it. People usually don't apply for a role when they don't see the point. They don't feel like they got the skills and they self-select out of the process. And this disproportionately impacts students from underserved communities. So it's critical that if we are to build high-performing workforces, which are truly diverse, students must have the confidence that they have the skills to apply for a particular role. Secondly, many students don't have a clear understanding of what different employees do or what a specific role even entails. 58% of students say that they do have a clear understanding, while 42% do not. Now, perhaps I'm shooting myself in the foot here, but I would go one step further and question the integrity of this statistic. At the time when I was applying for a job, I think I genuinely believed what I knew, what being a corporate lawyer was like. Sure, I was using Boston Legal and Suits as a proxy, so not the best data, but I probably still would have said that I fell into that 58%. So for the purposes of today, I'm going to say at best, 58% of students know what a specific role looks like. And at worst, the number's far lower than that. We can't expect candidates to stay in a job, perform in a job, enjoy a job, if they're metaphorically swinging in the dark when they're choosing that role to begin with. The culmination of all these statistics is that 83% of students feel anxious about applying for their first job. And for me, that's the most alarming statistic. Sure, it never has been, and it's never going to be easy to land a job, but that's a lot of anxiety being absorbed by the current generation of students. And I think it's something, as we'll talk about, which can be fixed. There is a lot of room for improvement there. So on one side of the ecosystem, we have a large number of students who, A, don't feel prepared for the world of work, especially at the point that they're applying for a job. B, don't understand what different roles and careers entail, and quite often don't even feel like they've got the confidence to apply for those roles. And C, are anxious about the job exploration and the recruitment process. On the other side, the system isn't great for employees either. Recruiting early talent is expensive, it's time consuming, and as the data still shows, it still results in significant downstream attrition. Going to the time consuming piece, I've yet to meet a campus recruiter who says, yes, I have a lot of time at the moment. I'd love to catch up for a long lunch. Perhaps they're just trying to avoid me, but I can confidently say that campus recruiters are the busiest, most resource-stretched people that we come across. Firstly, the cost to hire a candidate is high. A 2018 NACE survey found that the average cost per hire was $6,110, if you included personnel costs. Now, some of our corporate partners that I know of at Forage are making over 800 entry-level hires just into one division. So conservatively, that is costing close to $5 million just to hire those candidates into a division. That's some very basic math. I actually think that number is probably conservative, particularly given that the survey results are a few years old. But the cost doesn't stop there. You then have to factor in the cost of upskilling your hire. US companies spend $150 billion annually on employee learning. Now, granted, not all of this is for entry-level hires, but the steepest learning curve is happening at entry-level hires. And so we see a lot of learning and development spend happening in that space. So after investing these resources, after you spend a lot of time, effort, money attracting, hiring, and upskilling your hires, it still takes 2 years until an entry-level employee reaches what we call productivity. That's, when the training wheels are off and they're running off their own steam and making a meaningful contribution to the business's mission. Now, if the hire leaves before then, it's most certainly happened at a loss to the company. So alarmingly, according to a study by Accenture in 2019, 56% of college students who have just started an entry-level job plan to leave that job within 2 years of starting. I think I saw NACE data, which also showed that there was close to 30% attrition within the first 3 years of a hiring class. So you get the picture, right? Companies spend a lot of time, a lot of money on recruiting talent, only for a sizable chunk of that talent to leave shortly after joining. Yes, just to the question before, the NACE data says it's $6,100 for one employee, and they're leaving for entirely preventable reasons. As the data showed before, it's because they don't know what career to pursue and have chosen a job blindly, and they don't feel like they have the skills to succeed. Now, it's worth pausing at this moment and acknowledging the elephant in the room. And I know we have so many exceptional university professionals on today's session. And the question that's often asked is, isn't the role of universities to prepare students for the world of work? The role of universities historically has not been to prepare people for the world of work. Universities are traditionally focused on academic development and enlightenment. A good place to start is to actually look at the mission statement of different universities. These statements are ultimately a distillation of the university's core purpose. Why do they exist? What is their essence? What is their reason for being? So last night I was looking around a couple of different universities' mission statements, and I've chosen these two. The first one is University of Southern California. The central mission of the University of Southern California is the development of human beings and society as a whole through the cultivation and enrichment of the human mind and spirit. The other one I've chosen is the University of Miami. The mission of the University of Miami is to transform lives through education, research, innovation, and service. We are committed to the freedom of inquiry, the freedom to think, to question, to criticize, and to dissent. The first thing that strikes me about reading these missions is just how important universities are to society. What a critical piece of infrastructure. Universities are so much broader and so much more important than just helping a student get a job. But the second thing that strikes me is in no way is a university saying that its core mission is to prepare students for employment and to educate them on what jobs they should get. Now, fortunately, there are a ton of great universities who do spend a lot of time thinking about how they can support students as they transition into employment. But let's know that that's not the core focus of the experience. As an industry, we need to dispel the idea that the burden of upskilling young people specifically for the world of work, or giving them the compass to figure out where they should work, should be placed wholly on universities. Sure, they are playing an important role in this area, but as we'll chat about, ultimately it's employers that are the ones that have the most to gain from upskilling young people as early as possible. So of course, companies have been thinking about this for years, right? Companies have been trying to bridge that gap between university and the world of work for students. Most companies have entire teams dedicated to employer branding, talent attraction, and recruitment and assessment. We all know this. Companies spend a lot of time trying to describe what it is that they do, spending a lot of time trying to find the right talent, trying to upskill that talent. And a lot of these things are working. But as we'll show, based on the data, these strategies aren't entirely doing the trick. The truth is that candidates and employers are not able to assess whether they are the right match for one another until the capability and the awareness gap is closed. And that gap is closed usually after the hire takes place, after the hiring phase. It's after hiring that the candidate realizes, this is what a job actually entails. And it's only after hiring that a company is like, yes, we made a great hire here. This person wants to be here and they're an exceptional fit for what we do. So for me, the early talent recruitment industry finds itself at a fork in the road. Do we keep doing what we've always done? Do we seek to make small incremental improvements to our existing processes? Or alternatively, do we go big? Do we swing for the fences? Do we adopt bold new strategies which meaningfully turn the dial on the candidate and employer experience so that both sides get significantly better outcomes? And I don't want to come across as being too radical today, but that's why the key word in today's presentation is revolution. The idea is not to play small here, it's to go big. If we could start from scratch with everything that the industry's learned over the last 10, 20, 30 years, what would that process look like? I like to use the magic wand exercise. If you had a magic wand and you could create the perfect system, what would that look like? At Forage, we believe that in this post-revolutionary world of recruitment, after we wave that magic wand, all companies will leverage technology and impactful content to effectively pre-skill young people at scale, both independently and working closely with universities. Companies will deploy accessible, impactful, scalable, realistic, and immersive training experiences to students from all backgrounds. Forget turning up to campus with a pamphlet containing career information. Students will be able to completely road test different careers and meaningfully experience a company's culture, their people, and their work from the comfort of their home. And they'll be able to do this using on-demand, interactive, self-paced virtual courses. And ultimately, and this is the important part, ultimately discover the careers which align with their passions and their superpowers. These experiences won't be for the privileged few, they will be free for everyone, creating opportunities for those who never had it before. And on the company side, you're going to have the tools in this new world to open your doors to the world. You'll be able to use technology to change students' lives through transformative, free, impactful online training experiences, which lead to real employment outcomes and better career decisions. Hold on to your chairs. You're not going to be looking at the CV and the GPA and what school someone attended nearly as much as you used to. You still might, but not nearly as much as you used to. Instead, you'll make hiring decisions based on high fidelity signals, such as a student's true ability and potential to do roles, as well as their compatibility with your culture. Your workforce will start looking and feeling like very different, like a melting pot of high performing, diverse students with rich and varied backgrounds. And most importantly, the talent won't leave you at the altar. They will consistently go on to become the leaders of your company. We strongly believe at Forage that education and training is going to be at the heart of recruitment, and both the candidate, universities, and companies are going to be benefit from this. There will finally be that mutual alignment that we've all been searching for. And fortunately for us, we're not the only ones who feel this way. Universities, companies, and students all recognize that finding ways to front load practical training for students and exposing them to new careers will result in better outcomes for all. So a very simple distillation of how we think the world of recruitment is going to change can be summarized in these two slides. Before the age of the internet and software, it made a lot of sense that the recruitment model, due to its constraints, would look like this. Companies would hire talent and then they would train that talent. Now, the problem with that approach is, as I mentioned earlier, it's only after that training phase that the company and candidate work out whether they're a good match for one another. And as we've discussed, the stats on the candidate and employee experience aren't great using this model. So this is what we think the new model will be. In the age of internet and software, these advancements mean that we can flip the traditional recruitment model on its head so that companies can pre-skill young people at scale first and then hire candidates. By this point, hopefully, and we'll talk a bit more about the specific reasons, it makes intuitive sense as to why this is a better approach. Not just from the candidate's perspective, they make career decisions with high conviction and they don't self-select out of applying for careers for fear of believing that they don't have the right skills. And from the company's perspective, the idea of hiring using poor signals goes out the door. It's about how do we bring people into our organization who are high intent, who know that they want to be here and have taken those extra steps to get to know what it's like to work at a particular company. So at the heart of this flip in this new recruitment model, where we train then hire, is this idea of pre-skilling. And you'll hear Forage people talk about pre-skilling a lot. But what do we actually mean by pre-skilling? Pre-skilling provides a way to prepare candidates for the workplace. It enables students to gain awareness of the skills required for a specific workplace and practice those skills in a safe space environment. The reality is that nobody is better placed than the employer itself to showcase what it does and what skills are required for emerging talent to be a success. Employers can now create a much needed stepping stone for emerging talent that bridges that capability and awareness gap we spoke about earlier. Using pre-skilling, employers can distill their workplace into a virtual environment, which can showcase either the company as a whole or specific divisions. For example, if you were to work in the software engineering team at JP Morgan, that's going to look very different to working in the investment banking division. So employees can do this by creating a series of hypothetical tasks, which are based on real life work that also follow the real life chronologies of events, or known as virtual work experience programs. So for example, if you're a student, you might want to learn what it's like to be an investment banker. You could enroll into an investment banking virtual experience program, and you might learn how to prepare a discounted cash flow valuation, or perhaps how to leave a voicemail to a director, updating them on a key development in an M&A transaction. Maybe you want to become a software engineer at a major tech company. You can enroll in a tech company virtual experience program. You can learn how to create, resolve, and respond to Jira tickets, learn how to use GitHub, learn how to leverage specific computing languages for different product lines. The idea is that these courses, these programs, simulate the workplace. They don't replicate academic content. Emerging talent can, in their own time and free of charge, participate and immerse themselves in these virtual programs. While the tasks aren't real, they feel real. And anyone in today's session can go on and check these out. They enable participants to not only gain a clear understanding of the skills required, but they also gain the skills along the way. This leaves them more empowered, confident, and prepared for the workplace. And why is virtual a part of the solution? Because virtual frameworks are effective, they're far-reaching, and they're accessible. They're not perfect, but they are much more accessible than existing ways. It's entirely unrealistic to expect all employers to build programs for in-person training experiences that bridge the capability and awareness gap with emerging talent. A virtual platform that is online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, with zero barriers to entry, enables anyone, anywhere, regardless of their socio-economic circumstances, location, or otherwise, to gain skills and awareness in their own time and in a safe space environment. Virtual training, as I said, is not perfect, but it is the right solution to pre-skilled candidates for the workplace. Unsurprisingly, students love these programs. Gen Z are the most plugged in generation in history. They operate so differently to even my generation, millennials. They are digital natives. These courses enable them to explore and experience careers on their terms using their technology, the technology that they use every day. And that's why we see so many students complete these virtual work experience programs. And employees benefit from candidates that are pre-skilled in their workplace before the candidate has even entered the interview room. Think about it. Candidates enter the talent funnel with knowledge of what an employer does, how it does it, and what qualities the candidates need in order to be a success in that workplace. And by completing a virtual work experience program, they also get a head start on gaining core skills, and the learning curve no longer starts at zero. This significantly reduces the burden on onboarding and training programs for new starters. One interesting thing we found at Forage is so many students enroll in our programs after they've already got a job. So they've been offered an internship or they've been offered a full-time job, and we find that they're enrolling in the program still. And that was curious because, we thought that most people would always be doing it before the job offer, but they would, once we investigated further, they were doing it to better understand what it was that they were going to be doing and to reduce the anxiety of that learning curve, so that they felt like when they walked into that company on day one, they felt like they had an idea of what would be expected from them. Further, pre-skilling through virtual work experience programs enables employers to redefine the definition of employer branding. By placing workplace-specific training at the forefront of their branding, employees shift from explaining what they do and what makes them unique to simply showing it. It's that old saying, right? Show, don't tell. And in doing so, they generate an enhanced talent pipeline that has made an educated, empowered, and specific decision to still apply to their workplace, immediately bubbling to the surface high intent candidates committed to their brand. Now, the good news is that pre-skilling works. The data shows that it works. And I totally appreciate that when we're talking about a revolutionary idea, a big change in the system, changing deeply entrenched processes and practices is challenging and it can be daunting. But fortunately, we know that it's worth it. At Forage, we've conducted a series of studies on the impact of pre-skilling candidates. And the studies found that 88% of students gain new practical skills. 99% of students answered strongly agree that pre-skilling made them more confident about applying for the role. Now, that for me is one of the most powerful statistics, right? It's about how do you give students the conviction to believe that they can belong in these organizations. And certainly we don't have 99% of students on the whole applying to every company that they, every dream job. 66% of students changed their mind about a potential company or career after doing pre-skilling, doing a pre-skilling initiative. That's also huge. That shows you what happens when you expose students to different careers earlier on the pipeline. They make better career decisions. We also gauge students' sentiments towards the pre-skilling model. We learned that 80% of students believe that a virtual training program that focuses on a specific work environment will make them feel better prepared for the workplace. 97% are more inclined to work at companies that invest in skilling before they start a role. And 93% of students believe companies have an obligation to skill and educate the workforce of the future. And innovative employers who are already embraced pre-skilling are seeing the benefits. Candidates are entering that talent pipeline better aware, better prepared, and more committed to the workplace. So why not flip the script and use pre-skilling as a way to revamp the way that we do talent? And the way that I think about it is very simply that the transition from learning to employment is a bridge, and universities do a fantastic job of getting the student halfway across the bridge. But unless industry meets students at that halfway point, we're essentially asking young people to make a blind leap of faith off that bridge and land with a thud into the world of work. So the best companies are going to find ways that build the second half of that bridge with and independently of universities, and deliver open source last skill mile skills training. They find ways to build, we always think about it as like connective tissue. They're finding ways to build that connective tissue between the world of learning and the world of doing. And they don't do it just for altruistic reasons. They do it because it creates pathways to access diverse, work-ready, high-intent students who know what they want to work for you and have built some fundamental skills. And ultimately, that's what the best recruiting teams care about. They don't care so much about their acceptance to offer conversion rates, not the number of applicants they get, not any other metric relating to hiring conversion. What they care about is ultimately the downstream performance of their hires, because early talent professionals are company builders. Early talent professionals are the ones sourcing and onboarding the future leaders of a company. And so getting the right people matters. We are in the early stages of conducting our next phase of research on the downstream impact of pre-skilling, not at the hiring level, but at the performance level. And unsurprisingly, the early data is demonstrating that students who are pre-skilled stay in roles longer than those who aren't pre-skilled, have higher job satisfaction, and outperform their peers at performance review time. For some reason, that slide's not loading. I should press this. Sorry, bear with me. Sorry about that. So virtual interactive courses are arguably the most scalable and accessible way to pre-skill talent. But there are, of course, other impactful ways that companies can pre-skill talent. For example, Google last year launched its Google Career Certificate program. They built a new credential, which is designed to prepare candidates for in-demand jobs. Kent Walker, who's the Senior VP of Global Affairs at Google, wrote that, we had to find other last mile training initiatives other than college degrees for many Americans. We need new accessible job training solutions, from enhanced vocational programs to online education, to help America recover and rebuild. IBM is also a company that we admire in this space, who's done a lot of incredible work working with community colleges, co-creating curriculums which are optimized to prepare students for in-demand jobs in the jobs of the future. We've seen some really powerful collaborations between universities and employers. I actually saw that IBM yesterday in Canada has announced a partnership with Carleton University, where they've announced a 5-year, multi-million-dollar collaboration agreement, where the plan is to equip students for essential jobs in emerging careers, such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data science. And I read that IBM Canada is providing student apprenticeships to students at the university, opportunities to collaborate on research programs, projects including interaction with the IBM Data Science Elite team. They're also creating micro-credentials. IBM professionals will be guest lecturers for ongoing and new programs in the data analytics program at Carleton University. And I would strongly recommend going and checking it out. I just came across it in my research, and it's like a really modern and exceptional example of industry and universities coming together to deliver better curriculums which are responsive to workplace needs to their students. And as I've mentioned a few times today, indeed, universities are a very important part of the puzzle. We found that universities are working hard to find innovative solutions to ensuring that their curriculum and their broader infrastructure are responsive to those workplace needs. At Forage, we work with universities who have decided to embed our virtual experience programs into their career centres and coursework. It's another great example of mutual alignment between universities, students, and employers. Universities want to set their students up for success when it comes to transitioning into the workforce. And they know that exposing students to a range of different careers before the recruitment process results in the best outcomes. Company-created virtual experience courses enable universities to bring career exploration into that classroom. While this is not the core focus of universities, it does allow universities to provide that meaningful support to students and enhance the relevance of their curriculums. And I can see in the thread there that we've got some of the universities talking about implementing Forage now, and we really appreciate your support. Of course, the magic number is free. And I think this is where we're seeing industry continuing to collaborate with universities. At least with the universities that we work with and our corporate partners, our resources, our content, our software, our tech is entirely free for students. It's entirely free for universities to implement, and it's very easy to implement. Our content is totally already stood up, and we've seen implementations ranging from 4 to 5 months as low as 2 days. But obviously, the real benefactor in all of this is the students who have the opportunity to develop those critical workplace skills, improve job prospects. They get real credit. I think that's I think one of the most frustrating parts about when I was applying for a job was you would apply for so many jobs, and we hear this from students all the time, and you might get like a 2-sentence response from a company being like, "We appreciate your effort, but unfortunately we don't have a role for you." And you've put a ton of effort into creating your application. Every student who jumps onto our program or into a pre-skilling initiative is a guaranteed credit, right? Everybody walks away with the ability to gain a certificate, to be able to use it on their CV, to be able to use it on their LinkedIn, and more importantly, being able to walk away with tangible skills. So to use just a case study of how universities are looking to integrate pre-skilling initiatives into their faculties, one that we're currently working with, and I'm obviously biased here, I keep talking about law. I promise we do work with, we have a ton of programs outside of law, but given my background, I always gravitate to this. We're currently working with the University of Florida, Levin College of Law, to empower all students to experience what life's like as a summer associate. When we approached the faculty, they were looking for ways to front-end practical training for their students. They knew that honing the academic discipline of law was super important and indeed their core purpose, but equally they knew that there was a disconnect between study and the practice of law. And so the faculty integrated our Whiting Case. For those who don't know, Whiting Case is one of the largest global law firms, their virtual experience program into their Law 6550 course. All students are now required to do that course, which now blends academic learning with practical application of the workplace. And so in this course, students get to navigate lifelike simulations, such as hypothetical legal transactions and disputes. And the faculty was able to leverage our content for free, super easily, and both university students and companies have really benefited from this partnership. So we've got a couple of schools that we work with up here. We're proud of all of our partnerships, and we'd love to speak to other universities who might be interested in working with us, and companies. And so that brings us to the end of today's presentation. And thank you for bearing with me. Before we move to questions, I challenge everyone to reflect on whether you think the early talent recruitment world is going to look different in the future, or is it going to look the same as today? Now, I hate to be the person who uses sporting analogies, and at that, very overused sporting analogies, but I often think about that famous and admittedly overused Wayne Gretzky quote that seems to jump up on every PowerPoint presentation, where he said that the best players skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been. For any Canadians on the call, I hope I haven't butchered that. Please forgive me, I'm Australian and we don't have too much ice hockey down there. But consider whether the best companies are going to be doing things very differently in 10 years' time compared to what they do today. My bet is they do. If you think that the world of early talent is going to look different, imagine you had that magic wand and think about what that future might look like. For me, I think we're going to find ourselves in a world where students and companies can mutually discover one another through impactful and immersive training experiences that lead to better career decisions and better hiring outcomes. By flipping that script and finding ways to pre-skill students before the recruitment process, companies will be able to connect to high intent, aligned, diverse students, and students will find and believe they can belong in the roles which clearly align with their superpowers and passions. Oh, sorry, someone's just calling me. I'm extremely optimistic about this future, and I'm clearly all in on it. So here are some of the programs that we have running on our website. Feel free to jump on and have a look at these programs. This is just a sample. We've got over 90 companies on our platform. I think we've got 90 new courses launching over the next 2 months. So a lot of incredible, valuable content is currently being uploaded onto our platform. For anyone who is interested, our team has prepared an action-packed e-booklet which summarizes and expands on a lot of the perspectives and data that I shared today. It's obviously free to download, and we've included a link on this deck, which I hope Nace will share. Otherwise, you can download it directly from our website, which is www.theforage.com. And also feel free to email me with any questions, whether you want to get to know us. My email is tom@theforage.com. So that's a good place for me to leave it. For those who have lasted this long, thank you so much for bearing with me. And at this point, I'll hand it over for any questions that there might be out there.
Yes, Tom, we do have a few. Do students opt in to share their information to companies, or do companies automatically see what virtual experiences the student participates in?
Yes, that's an extremely important question. So students have to actively opt in to sharing their information with a company for that company to be able to connect with that student. So you can still do the programs as a student and not share any of your data whatsoever. We find that I think the most recent stat is that 88% of students actively opt in to sharing their information, because unsurprisingly, students are trying to build a connection with employers. They're trying to showcase, they're trying to forge that connection. So, that's like an active step. So the student actively has to take that step. But yeah, the short answer is that non-students can complete our programs without sharing any data with our corporate partners.
Thank you, Tom. Are the legal opportunities only available for law students? Or are there some for undergrads?
Yeah, also a great question. We actually find, so we have courses with different capabilities. So we have courses for students who are considering doing a law degree. We've even got some courses, without distracting everyone on here, because I know it's not the core focus, we've even got courses for students between the ages of 16 and 18 who are thinking about, what careers and what degrees they might want to pursue. So yes, we do have law programs for students who aren't currently studying their JD.
Thank you. Did share Tom's and then clarifying question is $6,110 for one employee.
Yes. So that was according to that 2018 NACE survey, which I think you can access on the NACE website.
And yes, there will be a chat box transcript generated after, and it will have all the questions that were unanswered in there. Link was put in the chat. Tom's email was provided as well. Do employers invite students to take a course based on meeting them at a recruiting event, or is a list provided for students to access and join at will?
Yes, so the courses are completely free and open access for students, right? So if you jump onto our website, it's like, imagine you jump onto Netflix, but it's free and you can enroll in the different courses. So we do find that our partner companies will promote the programs like on their careers website, for example. So for example, when roles aren't open, and students are like, hey, I want to know what it's like to work at your company. If you go on to like JP Morgan's career website, for example, you'll see like, hey, you should check out our software engineering program in the meantime, and build skills and understand what it's like to work at our company. And we'll let you know when applications open. But when companies go onto campus, of course, students are coming up to their booths and they're like, hey, what it is that you actually do, trying to get to understand the company. And the company will often, obviously answer their questions, but as a next step, be like, hey, you should go and check out our course on Forage and, get a better understand. That will give you a deeper, more immersive understanding of what it is that we actually do.
Thank you, Tom. Amazing that this is free for universities and students. Does Forage profit from employers then?
Yes, so we charge companies a subscription fee to post these programs on our platform. And so the value proposition for companies is this is a scalable way to showcase your people, your work, your culture to, hundreds of thousands of students, millions of students around the country. So it's really important to us that we're building a system which is accessible to students, and that's why we have no barriers to entry. You don't actually even need a student email to log into our courses. We also find students who are studying at boot camps, who are studying at two-year community colleges, will also enroll in our programs as well. So yes, it's entirely free for students and universities, and it's companies who are funding the creation of these programs.
Thank you. What are some industries that Forage would like to expand to see as gaps in the catalog?
I love that question, because if you think about the utility of our website for students, it requires that we have a diversity of different courses on there. If we've only got 100 of the same courses, we're not actually helping students discover their dream career. So one thing that we're working on at the moment is creating a bunch of programs with NGOs, not-for-profits, charities, multi-government institutions. So think about organizations such as the UN, World Bank, the IMF, Medicine Sans Frontier. They're the types of organizations that we'd love to work with. And of course, we wouldn't charge those organizations, but it's really important that we give students not just pathways into corporate jobs, but into a bunch of other careers that they might be interested in as well. So we have a good range of courses at the moment. We've got construction programs, marketing programs, fashion design programs, software engineering, law, banking, accounting, auditing. But I think, the government roles and not-for-profit roles are certainly the next kind of frontier of courses that we'd love to get onto our platform.
Thank you, Tom. How does Forage approach building in opportunities that are more hands-on, for instance, mechanical engineering?
Yes. So our starting assumption is that there is very few careers out there which we can't transform into like a digital bite-sized online experience. So like construction would be like one of those examples, right? Where construction is like a hands-on job, right? And so what we do is we package up the things that, like you don't have to always be doing the tasks necessarily on your computer. You might be using tools outside of your computer, and we'll be finding ways to allow students to like upload those deliverables or like evidence of those deliverables onto our platform. So yeah, it's not always easy, but I think that given that we live in a digital world, there are very few careers which don't have tasks or parts of their job which touch on the digital sphere. And so we really focus on packaging those up into these bite-sized online organizations, programs rather.
Thank you. Is most content on Forage focused on an undergraduate audience? Will graduate students also be able to see that information and courses are appropriate and geared towards them?
Yes, for sure. So we have programs with like we've got a number of programs with BCG, for example, which are certainly very relevant for postgraduate students, people at business school and whatnot. So we find that we have like graduate students, like MBA students doing our programs. We find that we have, as I said, 16 to 18-year-old students who are doing our program. Our program like descriptions will typically indicate like who is like the best type of user. But yeah, the courses are open and agnostic for anyone to access.
One final question for the group, Tom, and then you can close. If a university partners with you, can they get reports of student usage? And I'll repeat that. If a university partners with you, can they get reports of student usage?
Yes, is the short answer. So it's very important that we share where the student has like opted into sharing that data. That universities have a sense of how well students are engaging with their programs, like what the completion rates are, what faculties are they coming from, what programs are they enrolling in. So we're actually, we've got the beta version live, but we're actually building like software for universities, which is entirely free, so that they can log in and see live stats on how their courses, on how their students are engaging with their programs. So yeah, if anyone is interested in learning more about that free software or deploying our programs to their students, obviously feel free to reach out to our team.
You can close, Tom.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom Brunskill and Forage, for a very informative session. And thank you, participants, for attending today's webinar. The archive, along with step-by-step instructions on how to receive these items, will be made available within 3 to 5 business days. Please note that the PowerPoint presentation will be made available following today's webinar. We would like to thank you for attending today's session. This officially concludes the webinar, and you may now sign off.